to Discography, the music podcast that delivers the objective truth about the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever existed. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on the Jesus Lizard, along with our very special guest, No Age's Randall. This is part one of a two-part series. If you're tuning in for the first time, I quit my job a couple months back while putting the Pavement series together because I do it all. From obtaining the guests, doing all the social media, all the recording and editing, you name it. We're a year in, and there's a real audience building, tens of thousands of downloads in 70 countries, consistently ranked in the top 30 music commentary podcasts. And so now I'm in free fall mode on a serious mission. So why am I telling you this? Because I'm doubling down on Discography. My wife and I are in the process of selling our house, and we'll be driving to the East Coast this winter to live frugally with our 4-year-old, and all of that just to ensure that Discography is the standard bearer for all that's awesome about music. So don't go anywhere when this episode's done. Subscribe. Coming up, we have Trip to Fantasy, the 2.5-hour greatest sleep albums of all time, holiday super mix, premiering on Christmas Day, not to mention soul-bearing interviews with the Wrecking Crew's legendary Don Randy and Foxygen's Jonathan Rado, Sergio Diaz from Os Mutantes rating his own early work, and on and on and on, way into the future. Here's what I'd love for you to do. Check out all the back episodes and share the ones you dig with your friends. Go ahead and tag me too. Also, join our Facebook group, Discography Soldiers of Sound. We're on Instagram and Twitter too, in case you don't mess with the Zuck. Also, please rate the podcast 5 stars, along with a beautifully worded review, especially if you're listening to the show on good old Amazon Music, or Spotify, and anywhere else for that matter. It'll help a lot. You can find the link to our legendary playlist in the show notes and also on our website at discography.com. And if you're like me and enough's just never enough, then visit patreon.com/discography and become one of our Patreon Soldiers of Sound. Our Patreon feed is the ultimate music deep dive. I post 3 shows a week. The main show on Sunday, then Discography's The Private Press with Paul Major on Tuesdays, and a Thursday wildcard episode, which is either an interview with that week's guest or one of our other offshoot shows like Rock Cousteau, Queasy Listening, and Battle Royale. So hey, try it for a month, you've got nothing to lose. Okay, back to business. First things first, you need to know just how seriously I take this craziness. Discography is heavily researched, and the music is always reassessed with fresh ears, even the bad stuff. We're not just covering albums. We do a searingly honest deep dive analysis of all EPs, singles, comp tracks, relevant solo work, and bootlegs. Every release is slapped with an objectively accurate star rating between 0 and 5, which allows us all, the real reason we do this, the Tootsie Pop reward at the center of the rock and roll lolly, to come face to face with the true shape of an artist's overall arc. And away we go then, with Randall as we climb the serrated, razor-sharp edges of Mount Jesus Lizard. Uncompromising, real-deal, buzzsaw confrontationalists turned massive success story in the major label's collective, perennial intent to kill anything that's perfectly irreducible and unable to be replicated. And speaking of an unreplicable irreducibility, as far as I'm concerned, tonight's guest is a contender for recipient of Daydream Nation's past baton. Emanating from the LA club The Smell, and boom! Just like that, you've witnessed the latest in an endless chain of lazy journalistic references to which this dude and his Pressiverse bro, Dean Allen Spunt, have been hogtied for the better part of 16 years. All things being fair, it's a pretty unavoidable association due to the incendiary brutality of his particular art punk slant. But our guest knows that at the end of the day, he's just like me, a skin bag spilling over with old moldy notions of who we once were as our little dudes hijack the remote and make us watch goddamn Blippi and all other manner of horrifyingly charmless toddler figureheads. heads. I'm guessing over his last 8 kid-having years that he's taken great pains to find those areas within himself that he can seal off behind him as he hides deep, deep inside. And that those narcotized interior spaces are beginning to tilt towards ambience inclusive beauty, at least if one is to use his 2019 solo release and new No Age Jam as criteria for judgment. But then to go right ahead and request an episode covering the evisceratingly family unfriendly touch and go touchstone that you did makes me realize that you must actively hate me, sir. So, lads and ladies out in the most art damaged, punk-fucked corners of Discograffitieville, please, won't you always sing, "It's the beginning of a no age," whenever you meet this guy, as revenge for making my family endure Yao's howl for the good part of 2 solid weeks. It's No Age's rockin' and venerable Axeman, knob twiddler, and weirdo ripper papa to a 3 and 8-year-old, Randy Randall.
Wow, David, thank you so much. Thanks
You're
for
welcome.
having me. Holy, I was trying to remember the introduction that David Yao gives on their live record show. It was an honor to play here at the CBGBs in such a relaxed and conducive atmosphere. Yeah, thank you for having me, man. This certainly is a quite the undertaking, and I am in no way, shape, or form authorized by anybody to rank these records. I do not have any jurisdiction or authority to judge anything that this amazing band has done. I say that just as a disclaimer, get that out of the way right up front. That
bullshit. As a disclaimer, I have to tell you that you're totally underestimating your own capabilities in this area. If anything, I'm the guy who needs to come clean, because in the 1 year we've been doing this, and I say we to make it sound bigger than it is, it's me. Yeah. In the 1 year that I've been doing this, I've never done a band, except maybe for Stevie Nicks, which was a request, that I wasn't familiar with at all. The only song I knew was Mouth Breather.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you had a lot to take on.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I came to Jesus Lizard in the early 90s. I mean, I'm 41 now, and so like many people of my age, Nirvana Nevermind, took me from listening to Do the Bartman and MC Hammer's Addams Family Values soundtrack to wearing ripped jeans and sporting a flannel in the middle of summer in Southern California.
Right.
With my the floppy haircut was shaved underneath and parted in the middle, and just ate up everything that kind of came from that world. And so I kind of went from Nirvana to Sonic Youth to My Bloody Valentine, and at the side of it there was sort of Helmet. And then Jesus Lizard sort of dropped in my lap with the single. The first release of theirs I had was the single or EP Lash. I had that on CD, and that just opened me wide up. The song Monkey Trick, I think, was like, right, of that, like of the pantheon I just spread out. Certainly it was not Fox children's music, and nor was it really Nirvana or Sonic Youth or My Bloody Valentine. It was something else entirely, and I was not familiar with the releases of The Birthday Party or Scratch Acid or that little discordant sort of chugging along kind of notion of music had not really been introduced into my atmosphere, and so I plugged Jesus Lizard into that sort of syncopated, abrasive, confrontational yet head trippy kind of math rock meets art damaged sort of vibe that just locked me in early, and so they were the band I judged everything else against in that regard, in terms of piercing guitar sounds, pummeling syncopated drum sounds, yowling from Professor Yao. It was all the bass rumble, everything. I was like they sort of were the template that I judged most music from, really, even for the rest of my life. So
are you discovering this stuff as it's coming out, or in retrospect?
I would think so, somewhere. I mean, so I'm looking here, I don't have the dates tattooed onto my brain, but I'm looking with the help of the never wrong, infallible Wikipedia. And I see Lash came out in 93. So that sounds just about right. Because what we put Nirvana, at 91, 92?
Yeah, 91 is Nevermind.
Yeah. So I'm 10 years old. in 91, 10, 11. That sounds about right. Somewhere, I bet 92.
So you're actively as a 10, 11-year-old seeking out this kind of stuff. Was this, I mean, had you
weird music?
Had you already discovered Funhouse?
No. So Stooges came. I had to retroactively insert that into my brain. So I have two older brothers. They were born in 68 and 69. 68 and 69. My older brothers from my mom's first marriage, so like half brothers, but we were raised together. Okay. And my oldest brother, Sam, was a skateboarder, guitar player, music fanatic. And my other brother, Dave, he was also a big music fanatic, but he leaned more on the Jane's Addiction, kind of psychedelic cults, the band The Cults, and these, he went a little more metal with his likings, where Sam was very like, of the time, late 80s into the 90s, kind of Paisley Underground into, the big explosion of alternative rock. He was right there primed for that age.
Tell your brother that only a couple days ago, I described The Cult to my wife as metal for chicks.
Yes. Yeah. That's not far off. Yeah. My brother, Dave, had the big long hair and the leopard shirts and stuff. Whereas my other, so he was into that zone, and he was a good looking guy. He was a surfer. And then Sam was a little bit shorter, and he was hard of hearing, and he actually ended up passing when he was 25. But he was a very unique kind of person. Sam was his own person of his own making. And so he wore, Converse Chucks and skated in them. And, I have pictures of him up here in the studio, big Susie and the Banshees t-shirt, with chinos. And so he was so Sam was really my main musical influence. And so whatever he put on, I just took as gospel. So I was very much as a young kid. So they graduated in 88 from high school. So I was 7 years old, and my brother started a skateboard shop in a small town with my mom. My mom, took out a bank loan because my brother was, had learning disabilities and stuff, but he wanted to open up a skate shop. He couldn't really hack it in junior college, but my mom thought, teaching him how to run a business would be good life skills for him. Right. And it was huge. So I kind of grew up in this skateboard shop from 88 to 91. And in that I just soaked up all of, Pal Peralta, Santa Monica Airlines, World Industries, all this kind of stuff that was, all the music that came along that, a lot of Minutemen, a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers, sort of stuff that was happening around that late 80s sort of alternative rock skate scene. So that's kind of, so I had a leg up on this stuff. So as a 10-year-old, by that point, getting deeper into an underground music scene I didn't jump in. My first love really was the band White Zombie. I felt like they were the first band that I liked that my brother didn't like, understandably. Right. He probably had more taste than that, but I felt like they were kind of right, my sensibility as a 10-year-old or 9-year-old, 10-year-old. And then, like I said, Nirvana sort of set the template and reset all the chess pieces on the board.
Let's introduce the characters in today's episode. We got David Yao on vocals, Dwayne Dennison on guitar. Help me here. Is it David W.M. Sims?
I think so.
Okay, David W.M. Sims on bass. And then after the first record, Mac McNeely on drums, who actually becomes a key contributor. So Dwayne asked David to play bass on some songs he wanted to record. That's how it started. And then Yao suggested instead that he sing, and then have David play bass instead. They threw a name on the band, started rehearsing a bunch of times with a drum machine. Yao and Sims moved to Chicago in 88. Dennison followed the next year. As far as an influence, Nirvana, never stops talking about him. Bill Keller, Mastodon, Henry Rollins, Helmet, Lydia Lunch, as are so many bands who never really made it. They're constantly talked about as an influence.
Yeah.
Do you know at what point their live show became the thing that it became? Was it immediate?
I have no idea. I didn't see, the first time I saw them was at Lollapalooza in 1994, which I remember being underwhelmed, not by them, but just didn't feel, I knew the record so well, and it didn't really translate to a 3:00 in the afternoon, bright, sunny Irvine festival, band shell sort of vibe. I don't, it was not their fault, but I just think the environment was following Mighty Mighty Boss Tones and then going into Beck, I think, so it wasn't the way I wanted to see them, but that was the first time I saw them. And then the next year I saw them at the Roxy, which is a small club, maybe like 500 capacity club in Hollywood. And so that would have been 95, I think, maybe on the Down tour. But that was incredible. And that was the experience I was looking for. That was
right.
Blew my hair off my head.
At the end of everything, after I had all my notes, I've got like 30 pages of notes here. After I had everything all done, I said, almost as an afterthought to myself, I should probably go back and see what their live show was like.
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, okay, I guess I got to spend some time here.
So you did the donut without the hole.
Exactly.
The live things. So I say Lash is where I started. And then from there, before getting Goat or Liar, I got Show, which again, it probably was the new thing that was coming out, as it came out in 94. Here I'm looking. And it's the cover, which you texted me earlier about how great their covers are. It's just David Yao's like hairy stomach,
Right.
But that record or that CD, I should say, that live CD Show, I think is probably the one that's tattooed onto my brain the hardest, and where I know those versions of the songs, and it was recorded live at CBGB's. And again, I had to put this together after. I didn't know what CBGB's was at the time. I just liked this band, right. But they were played in between Don Caballero and the Damned. What a lineup that would have been, right?
Yeah. I saw a clip when I was doing research on this, a video of online of them performing in 1994. And Yao gets hit so fucking hard with a beer bottle that it shatters completely, like it explodes. He goes down, and literally within 3 minutes, he's not just back up, they're playing again.
Wow.
Yeah. And, it's kind of amazing. And he was frequently performing completely naked. He lit himself on fire once in Switzerland. He jumped off the stage. Nobody caught him, and he knocked himself unconscious. This is Gigi Allen was probably the last guy who performed like that.
I was just thinking too. I was like, I could see where the comparison. Who else do you compare that to? But like a Gigi Allen type.
Right.
However, I have to say that if that's all there was, it's a thin premise, right? I think Gigi Allen musically
Gigi Allen sucked.
It's not that's not the interesting part. Like the music and the musicianship and the other three guys in the band were head and shoulders above so many other players at that time, and that core trio of them together, just was incendiary and explosive, and that would have been enough, I think, to become the band that they were. However, you put Yao's kind of a visceral, body horror, antics on top of this insanely tight, melodic, taut, tension-filled, compositions, and there's where it goes to, legendary status. It goes from being a fucking tight, amazing, awesome band to just this legendary, what the fuck did I just experience kind of moment that, I say road rival something like the Stooges, right?
Yeah.
So I would go closer to Iggy than Gigi Allen, right? Where I think Iggy's thing of peanut butter and glass and cutting himself and this kind of body horror sort of performance art. I think Yao's more in that vein than sticking the microphone up his asshole and shooting drugs into his eyes.
Right. I mean, because he had nothing to back up the whole thing with, but or Gigi, that is. So, okay, so moving into this thing, to get back to the run up. So Yao and Sims moved to Chicago in '88. Dennison follows the next year. Their first EP, which is called Pure, was recorded by Albini and released by Touch and Go in '89. It's the only record by the band that uses a drum machine, I believe. Yeah, I
mean, I think all Albini's projects, at that time, his bands had, drum machine, so I think that it would make sense. They were sort of coming from that world.
Mac comes on board and plays the first live show with the band all together, July 1st, 1989. But most importantly, to move into phase one, Steve Albini recorded the first 4 albums, Head, Goat, Liar, and Down. Let's move into phase one, raw as fuck, 1989 to 1994. The first release is a single of the song Chrome, and man, do I love this song. It's so good. There's nothing like over elaborate about it. It kind of feels like Chuck Berry goes punk.
Yeah.
Nothing complicated, just good old basic mud flecked rock and roll muckabout. Just fucking like Detroit MC5 by way of speedball basements of the collective unconscious.
Nicely said. That's poetic.
I would say this is the blueprint. They built on this and things got more elaborate, but you know, I give this 4.5 stars.
I think I'm coming at it from a fan. So it's either fucking awesome or eh. Those are the two categories I have. So I mean, so Chrome goes into the fucking awesome category.
I'm sorry, I'm not moving forward till you give me some kind of star.
So okay, let's go 4 then, because there's more to come.
Then we're moving into the Pure EP, which I am not as impressed by. I didn't
love it. It was a weak spot for me.
Right. So let's talk about the background of this thing. It's their first big release. Only record by these guys with a drum machine.
So like I said, I got this on the CD where it was put with a head and Pure was kind of tacked on the end. And yeah, I remember really liking the head stuff. And then I was like, why does a CD get weird at the end?
Right.
It goes into these kinds of things. And it just didn't fit. I think, Mac is such a huge part of what I like and love this band. So so I'm putting these at like 2 on the 5 scale, right? Yeah.
Stars? Yeah. I give it 2 3/4. Let's break it down. Like, to me, there's a couple of decent tracks at first, and then it just kind of goes to shit. But they're poking around trying to find their thing. So
right, yeah. I mean, you think it's nice from an archival sort of perspective. You can you get a sense of where does an album like Goat come from, or where does this band come from, and you kind of can see the sketches and sort of some of the early sort of scratchings.
People like to say seminal when it's not good. Right. So, all right. So the first song, Blockbuster, is actually not even sung by Yao. The mumbled spoken word stammerings of David Sims.
Can I give a note on David Sims?
Please.
I talked about moving into Hollywood in '99, and there was the bowling lane, their bowling alley where The Big Lebowski was filmed.
Yeah.
This was, it was on Santa Monica Boulevard. And I remember going there in high school. It was a place that was fun to go to, and with a very lax sort of carding policy. If like the bartenders didn't look at you, it didn't look at you for too long. It was a $2 Budweiser. Who gives a shit, right? And so this was sort of the time. So I would go there in high school, and then once I moved to Hollywood, it was we'd go there all the time. And my roommate played in this band Chokebore at that time, who was kind of an AMREP band, kind of akin to Jesus Lizard in some ways, but I was going there with him. I was tagging along as a little brother, and so I mentioned after my brother had passed, I was sort of adopted by some of his friends, as their kind of token little brother. So anyway, I got to go to the bowling alley, and I met David Sims. We bowled together. And I remember being, whatever, I was 18 and drinking beer and bowling with David Sims, and then at the end of the thing, I was the driver because everybody else was too drunk, and I probably shouldn't have been driving. But David Sims needed a ride. The rest of the party kind of needed a ride. I think they'd all taken cabs because they were visiting, and so I got to drive him to his hotel or apartment or wherever he was staying. And so I remember being very, very starstruck early on. I was like, "Wow, this is what living in Hollywood is like."
And you thought you'd made it. I mean, that was it. There was
bowling at the Big Lebowski alley with David Sims at 18, drinking $2 Budweisers. Epitome of I didn't think life could get any better than that.
You were much farther ahead than I was at that point.
Yeah, I felt I was aware of the rare air I was breathing. Okay, anyway, David Sims sings on Blockbuster.
Did you dig for clues about the recording of Blockbuster?
I was doing my best to play it cool. And I don't think so. I mean, whatever that was, I'm sure wasn't great. And like I said, probably, two Budweiser buzz going on in my head. I was just doing the best to not shit my pants every time I, bowled a gutter ball. I'm just trying to look cool. Like, am I cool? Do I look cool? Am I still cool?
How can you help but not look cool at 18 years old?
No. I was all acne and bad mustache.
Well, I will tell you, and I'm going to get back to this, but your video for Eraser, it perennially and eternally puts you in the cool category. I mean, that is one of the coolest pieces of film and audio I've ever.
Oh, cool.
But I'll definitely get back to that.
Okay.
I just watched it again yesterday. I showed it to my 3-year-old, and I was like, and it takes a lot for him to, as you're well aware, to have his attention pulled away from whatever he's watching. And he, at the second, whatever the talcum powder is thrown on you guys, the second that happened, he was all in.
How fun.
So Blockbuster, I think, is a decent song. Bloody Mary is the other good one that I like.
Bloody Mary's awesome. And they play that live. That goes on into their live set and goes on to other releases.
When you were talking about that, the imprint, the thumbprint that Albini brings, Bloody Mary sounds exactly like all of Albini's other work, especially the bass. It almost feels like they're imitating his template. It's a pretty cool song. Then the other three, they're just kind of whatever. Rabid Pigs. It's a good song to punch out windows to, but that's about all I'd say. Starlit, bottom end stripped entirely bare off of the vocals, so it's just left as a like Iggy id growl, and then Happy Bunny goes fluff along. It's okay.
Experimental sort of vibe, right?
Yeah. Nothing amazing. I like it. There was better to come. And I'm curious, does this count as pig fuck? And what is pig fuck?
I don't know. I've heard that term. I don't like it.
I don't either.
So I'm going to dismiss it as a genre of music. I'm not into that kind of shit.
I mean, I mainly am not into that title because I find pigs sexually repulsive.
I like pigs. Yeah, I'm a vegan, and I've gone to visit those sanctuaries where they rescue pigs. They're beautiful. They're great. But that as a term, I think is just feels derivative and kind of I don't know. You don't want to say new metal. You don't want to say industrial or something.
Is that Primus? Is that what?
No. I think it's I've seen it applied to bands that sound like Jesus Lizard, but have an industrial kind of metal-y sort of thing. I think it debases the art of what it is. You know what I mean? I think that doesn't fit right to me.
But it also probably points to the fact that most of the bands in this genre have no art to them.
That's entirely possible.
Because, Jesus Lizard, it's more surprising than anything else. If you start reading the lyrics, okay, these guys are actually doing something that belies the brutal one-note aggression of their sound.
Right. No, and I think that's where, I think Yao adds a lot more than just, there's the stage antics and everything, but the lyrics. And I just think their entire conviction, I think, is not this shock and awe horror show sort of thing. I think they have, musical composition talent, obviously, as well as, this kind of energetic thrust to them. So I think there's more there than just, it's not a single note sort of thing. There is this kind of multi-timbral type of experience that you could get from a band like this on record and live.
So these motherfuckers enter the 90s with a drummer, and it winds up being a really good thing for them, even though, bands like Big Black, they benefited from the drum machine. These guys, there was kind of a hole that Mac really filled.
Amen.
Head takes things in a direction of growth. Kicking off with One Evening, the guitar stabs, it's just so hard. It feels like it's covered in leprosy scabs.
I love Dwayne Dennison's playing because I think he does 7 or 8 or 30 different types of guitar playing. He's not a singular guitar player in that everything is rehashed and reheated sort of riffs or, one note kind of, he's not I think another band you can kind of put somewhere, takes a little bit from PIL and that's, sort of those sort of sparse stripped down guitar parts. But then there's so much else. There's country, you can do a country twang thing. He does these beautiful sort of lush, almost sort of avant-garde classical type of guitar playing. Then there's the, real sparse, I don't know. I think he's kind of everywhere. And I think it's a really beautiful play between, David Sims and Dwayne, where they cover it's more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, a lot of the bands that follow this kind of a thing where you have, the music headed in one direction and then the singer laying something on top of it. There's a dissonance between what everyone's trying to do. It doesn't cohere. Mm-hmm. These guys, there's, what takes it to the next level is that somehow they've managed to tie the whole thing together so it has a singularity of purpose.
Yep. Well said.
SDBJ. So this begins the first streak of great songs in their history, I think, which I just imagine as South Dakota blowjob. It reminds me of Going Down to Florida by the Butthole Surfers. White indie insane person's twist on what blues would be like. It's a great piece of showmanship, and the vocal performance at the center is the star of the show. My Own Urine, great one. The first bunch of times I heard My Own Urine, I didn't even know that the song had officially started, because it's kind of belched out from the end of SDBJ.
It kind of, it speaks to sort of the live show sort of setting where one song leads to the next, to the next.
Yeah.
It's, you don't need an applause break after every song.
Conversely, I could easily slip this into a Halloween mix for my 3-year-old, and it wouldn't sound out of place. They have the, punch you in the face kind of stuff. Then they have that lumbering, creepy, crawly thing that used to happen in the 90s.
Yeah.
That lumbering heaviosity is a well that they come back to, not with as much regularity as the aggressive ones, but on every record, there's at least a couple of those.
It kind of serves as a nice sort of reprieve from the pummeling.
Yeah. It's probably overemphasizing it to say it's texture, because who knows if they even would think of a word like that. But yeah, it just gives it some variety. If you had lips, what are your thoughts on this?
You know what? It's funny. I have to go back. I have to listen to these again. A lot of it starts to blend together. 7 versus 8 I love. Pastoral I love. Killer McCann I think is my favorite off the whole record. So it's like some of these I kind of just, I'll recognize if they come up, but I don't have them dialed in.
Usually there's like one reminder I'll throw down. So if you had lips is the one with the crazy mid-song breakdown that's followed by Hey Shit Mouth.
Yes, I'm pulling it up now in my headphones, on my other headphones.
Yeah.
I love this opening riff, right? Like I love that kind of, again, that's that creepy crawly sort of stuff. Like, what's funny is I think about, I love 80% of Black Flag, and I think where the process of weeding out goes, I know, some people worship that era of it, but I always feel like, this is more, if Greg wasn't so stoned, maybe he had a kind of more of an amphetamine sort of addiction,
right?
Or just let himself be the ADD wacko that he was without trying to self-medicate. Right. He might have come up with something like If You Had Lips.
This is my favorite song on the record.
This is a great song, yeah. But as soon as I hear that opening riff, it's great. I love it.
It really is. And I have a thing, I have this thing that I've always felt very, very passionately about, which is sort of a pet peeve, great solos that are accompanied and tagged and stamped by incredible lyrics. A great example, the one I always think of, is Little Johnny Jewel. Tom Verlaine saying, "And then I lost my senses." Before one of the most amazing guitar solos ever. It's a comment on the guitar solo. Hey Shit Mouth belongs in the pantheon.
Oh man, I mean, what a just a tour de force too of Dwayne Dennison and all the things he does. Wow, it's a great song.
It's a great,
and that kind of simple, sort of the solos. Yeah, it builds. It builds and builds and builds, and the tautness and the tightness. Right, this is where I think where they're really. This is, I would say, by here, they've defined what the Jesus Lizard is.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's just, it's not quite GOAT, but the template is much more cohesive here. 7 versus 8, I don't like as much as you. I think it's more of a standard issue screamo kind of a thing. I
mean, again, I'm so smacked in the head. I don't know if I can have a objective. Everything is very subjective to when I was a kid hearing these things.
Just tell me I'm wrong.
I'm willing to hear the conversation and have a conversation about it. It's a little plodding, I guess I could say. Whereas some other stuff has the taut tension and the explosion, the tighten up and release kind of thing. This just kind of plods along. But this band, up until Down, in my mind, really can do no wrong. I'm not going to be great on. I think I would. Yeah, I won't get to the rating just yet of it, but it's this is great. Yeah, so Pastoral, right? What do you think of Pastoral?
Pastoral is awesome because this reminds me of Codeine, who I love. And that early '90s. Now I look back and it's so quaint because the world is such a piece of shit now. But in the early '90s. We were looking around trying to find things to be upset about, and that indie boo-hoo-hoo kind of a thing. This has that great descending guitar figure. It's a great song.
Yep,
this is my favorite song on the second side.
Okay, yeah. Do you have it on record, or how do you know the side breaks?
10 songs. It's song number 6. I'm guessing it's on the second.
Yeah. It's so funny. Yeah, for me, this is so much CD world. I've later gone back and gotten the records on reissues or found them, but forever, these will be the things I had on the Discman or in the car.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's when it came out, and that's I can't even picture the album artwork on a CD or I'm sorry, on a record. It just belongs on a CD sleeve.
That's how I know it.
Yeah,
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine it bigger, but why?
Yeah, exactly. Especially because I mean, literally, it's got to be the worst album artwork I have ever seen in my fucking life. It's like every single one is just awful.
I love it.
You do?
Yes. I would, if I had this, as a large format artwork, if I had the original piece, I would hang this on the wall.
I'm going to send you Jesus Lizard wallpaper.
Please.
Okay.
I'll put it up everywhere.
All right. Your wife.
Well, she's never going to see it. She's. I would say up until obviously, Down is my last hurrah for artwork and for music, but we'll get there.
Yeah. I'll just do all their major label stuff will be your wallpaper.
Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah, I may feel that kind of nausea.
Yeah. All right, so Wax Eater, good song, killer guitar work, good thing. The guitar work, especially the vibe of the song, has a very Minutemen heavy stamp about it.
Oh yeah, I could hear that.
What it reminded me of. But I like those two. Nothing great, I don't think. Titan Shiny's okay, and then Killer McCon is good too. But really, I think Pastoral is the last great song on the album.
Oh man, Killer McCann, that's the one. I don't know. Maybe just I think about it live. But no, Pastoral is beautiful. I mean, again, it speaks to the band, right? They do many things. I think Pastoral would be some band's best song ever, the best song ever written. Yeah. But this happens to be an explosively propulsive live kinetic band, and so the song like Killer McCann, demonstrates that, and so you got these, it's almost like you have two or three bands going on. I was just going to say, like, going back to like, a Good Thing or Wax Eater, I always think about the Texas part of it. I think when I learned later, I didn't know at the time when I was first hearing these things, I just thought Chicago, whatever that place was. But then going back and adding Austin into the mix, even though Dwayne's not from there, but there's, putting a little Texas in the stew of music, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, there's a Texas kind of rockabilly sort of thing that I wasn't aware of at that, like I say, at the time when I was first hearing this. But going and then looking at his work with Hank the Third and some other stuff he's done.
Right.
Okay, yeah, there's definitely a rockabilly.
Yeah, he played with him a while later, right?
I think so. Yes, yeah, after the breakup of Jesus Lizard.
Ultimately, what do you give this record?
So Head, I think, is going to be in that. Oh gosh, I mean, great. We can do 3/4, right? We can do
any iteration, any fraction.
So let's go 3 3/4. Do you listen to the Doughboys? This podcast?
No.
They review fast food chain restaurants and they go by forks. So they can give it 5 forks, or you can do 5 forks 1 tine. Meaning it was 4 tines, 3 tines. This reminds me of. This would be 3 3/4 for me, because or a 4. Let's just go to 4.
Okay, you're gonna do 4.
There's nothing that really takes it out of there. I just think they go on to do so much more. I'm trying to build in the headroom.
Yeah, that's the thing. I typically tend to rate on a curve.
But Jesus Lizard versus Motley Crue, It's
right.
Motley Crue is like into negative numbers, where this would be off the chain. So it's on a curve. So within their own work.
Like Kickstart My Heart is a great song, though.
Yeah, I can't stand that band. But okay, yeah. So yeah, I go 4.
But then comes Goat.
Masterpiece, masterwork, right? And this is what they're going to forever be known for. This is the record.
Yeah, this is
not a bad song. The whole thing.
It's their platonic ideal. So much so that later on, as I'm listening to other stuff, I'm thinking, why don't I just put on Goat?
Right. Yeah, I know.
They do it so well here. Then comes, you want to take us through? Why don't you lead the charge here?
Then comes Dudley. I mean, it's a steamroller. It's funny. I had a friend in high school, and we would go through car washes and then try to find the perfect song. Those like automated car washes at a gas station.
Yeah.
And try to find the best song to time up with it. It was kind of like our Dark Side of the Moon, so the Laserian sort of experience, or timing something up. And this song, going through a car wash, was the best. Was like that was the best version we came up with, because you're sitting there and your car slowly being pulled into this mawing machine of soap and suds and whips and then the big roller comes down, and you're just being hit by everything, and like the sides are being slapped and the whole car is being consumed. I mean, it felt like the most, perfect allegory for a song like that, is going through one of those automated car washes.
That's really funny and very ironic, because I intentionally did not take a shower today because it felt antithetical to the vibe.
You needed some musk, some odor, some of that David Yao hairy chest.
I mean, I've been up since 2:30 in the morning. I just walked 3 miles, but I was like, I gotta feel it. If he could be naked and throw himself and try to crowd surf without a crowd to catch him.
Oh my God.
I can go one day without a shower.
You can do it. Yeah. To the chagrin of everyone else that you inhabit your life with. So then comes down. I mean, what an opener, right? It's just right out there, just like it's a steamroller. Here's where we start, and we're just gonna grind you into the ground like a nub.
You call it steamroller. I have it in my notes as bulldozer. So
there you go. Same thing, right? Heavy machinery. Well, and again, talking, the term like pig fucking or whatever this genre is. I mean, steamroller would be such a better term in my mind. You know what I mean? Or some kind of heavy machinery music or something. You know what I mean? That's such a better apt description. Yeah,
I was throwing down the gauntlet here. After the creeping dread of the intro of Then Comes Dudley, it feels like the way has been bulldozed clean for Yao to strike hot.
Oh my God, right? And then Mouth Breather comes in, that guitar riff that just starts it. We're off to the races. Forget it.
That very well could be their best song.
You know what? I wouldn't argue with that. Do you want to talk about the story now from the Slint documentary?
Yeah. Let's talk about
where this goes.
Yeah.
So the story is Britt Walford, the drummer for Slint, house sat at Steve Albini's house and lost the keys. And so he would sneak in through the attic window, basically look like he was breaking into Albini's house for the week or month or however long he lived there. And Albini's gets home and he goes into the studio to record with the Jesus Lizard to make this record Goat. And I guess he's retelling the story about Britt doing this to his house. And he says the line, "Don't get me wrong, he's a nice guy. I like him just fine, but he's a mouth breather."
Yeah.
And then David takes that, verbatim and puts it exactly into one of their best songs.
What you did leave out is that Britt had lost the keys to the front door. He came home drunk one night. He ripped the front door down, and instead of putting it back on the hinges and fixing it, he just nailed a bunch of 2x4s up to fix the door. and he broke the toilet, and it was raining piss into the basement where Steve's recording studio was set up. So that gives, the asshole nature of the sentence a little bit more context and just and a little bit more justifiable.
There you go. Yeah, don't get me wrong. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Like him just fine. But he's a mouth breather.
It is a perfect song. It really is. What chopped my fucking nuts off this time around is that, when Nub kicks in, I'm like, dude, this song is just as fucking good as Mouth Breather. It kind of is, and yet it has a completely different vibe to it. Let's talk about the bottleneck slide work that's only, for whatever stupid reason, only showcased in a couple different tracks in their history.
That's what I'm saying. It goes to show, the many faces and the genius of Dwayne Dennison. I mean, the man is a guitar player, but above and beyond just a Swiss Army knife of skill and style and technique that just is really endless. And he shows it off and does it so well. And I almost think if he were to do this, 3 or 4 more times, it could get threadbare. But he has the perfect version of each of these little techniques and these styles, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, Mouth Breather is very 90s. I say that with all due respect. And then Nub, it almost feels like it has almost an Allman Brothers boogie style classic rock ass shaking thing going on with it.
Yeah.
And that's gotta be totally. That's gotta be the bottleneck slide.
Yeah, just that. Yeah, but you're right though. I mean, the drums are it's this tom kind of work, and I mean, and really, I think this record is really where you sort of distill the Albini, Jesus Lizard, sound, that the room in the drums, right? You're hearing all this. There's all this tom work, but it's not lost. All the floor tom stuff. It's bouncy around you, but you hear it moving in the room. There's air around those drums. I mean, there's people could write a thesis about record engineering on this record. and how those drums sound. I mean, this would be the drum sound to define drum sounds, right?
He would just tell you he fucking put the mic in the right places.
And good for him. I'm sure that's what it, but I mean, yeah, not to take away, Mac's ability to tune a drum kit, I guess, and obviously to play it. But, as we'll go on to see, that it changes. It changes, when he's not there. So I give Mac a lot of that credit, but I got to give Albini some props.
He deserves a lot of credit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, lyrically, good to know that this is about a kid who sticks his arm out the window of a bus and gets it cut off. And so it's about his fucking phantom limb. Again, another brilliant lyrical conceit.
Right. And again, there speaks to the body horror and sort of the poetic and artistic nature. I think of, David Yao has motifs, right? Or things that, I think he's very aware, obviously, of his body and how he uses it. I mean, I would, Paul McCarthy, not Paul McCartney, not the Beatle, but the deranged Southern California performance artist, Paul McCarthy. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not.
I would imagine Yao was aware of him, or if not, it was kind of parallel thinking. Paul McCarthy existed in the 70s and the 80s, 90s, kind of in vague obscurity, but he worked a lot with his body. Like he in similar kind of G.G. Allen type of thing of using, food and fecal matter and these sort of scenarios of almost childlike. He would use masks a lot, and one piece I remember there was a big retrospective at LACMA in the early 2000s. But one piece, he'd put shit on his face and rubbed it all across the four walls of a room. And sort of in the piece is the documentation, the video and still photos of the room, but also working a lot with like ketchup and mustard and kind of on his body and with like Pinocchio things. I think one of his more famous pieces is this life-size statue of Pinocchio with his genitalia, his like kind of penis as like a garden hose, flesh-colored garden hose that sort of piles up and almost like a rattlesnake, or cobra like sort of coil beneath him. You know what I mean? So there's something in this kind of world, but the idea of about like missing your bodies and kind of the disgusting nature of our sort of viscera of the human form.
It's funny, all of these bands right around the same time, all of them in Albini's basement, they're all concerned and preoccupied with the same shit.
Yeah.
Pixies got the same thing, PJ Harvey, to a lesser extent, Nirvana. But they were all like, what is my body? What does this arm do? Things like that.
Where does the body end? Where does the self, its existential sort of like the tactile sort of investigation or dissection? Well, look at, and that speaks to the cover art, right? Too. Are you familiar?
Yeah, his body. It looks like flames, but it's his body. Is that what it is?
It's her. No, it's okay. They're saying it's a topless woman with a close-up image of nails projected onto her body.
Right.
Yeah. So it's this sort of, I always thought it was like a mannequin sort of taken off, with like the skin taken off or something. But there you go. Yeah. Nails projected onto a woman's body. Right. So you sort of, they're very forthright. These aren't hidden messages.
What's the story? Is there a drug thing going on here? I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm sure they did heroin, but I didn't come up with anything about drug abuse or who knows.
I've never seen any documentation of exactly what, if anyone went to rehab or had that type of thing. I mean, I would imagine, alcoholism probably played large parts in a lot of this work, but I don't know if it was uppers, downers, amphetamines, or I've never seen it documented or talked about.
I just assumed that these guys, that drugs played a part in their dissolution, but I really have no idea. Nothing leaped out to me about that.
There's not a song called Heroin like the Velvet Underground, right? That would give you the necessary, sort of like, oh, well, that's what they're into.
So Seasick. I love Seasick, man. Yeah. I love the barren arrangement. I love the simplicity of the lyrical approach, that hook of just screaming, I can't swim over and over again. Mm-hmm. This is a masterpiece.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, this is where you get into the guts and the meat and the good stuff of just this band. Right. You know what I mean? And lyrics that juice that just kind of capture you and you're locked in and it really feels like four pieces moving as one, right? This is really the definition of a band firing on all cylinders. If anyone wanted to know what that sounded like, a band that's all in the same boat, paddling in the same direction together.
Literally, I mean, not literally of this record, but all literally playing at one time when that used to happen. So Monkey Trick, don't know if you knew this.
Ooh,
but,
Irish Game.
What a great song, man.
Yeah.
The lumbering, creeping dread kind of a thing that they do. This is probably the best of those that they ever did. It's Yao's favorite song that they ever did.
Oh, wow. It's amazing. Like I said, yeah, this is what really got me into him on Lash. I think that was maybe the EP that came out after this. That's where I heard that first. And that was the song that I just was like, I've never, it carved a new pathway in my brain. I had no experience of how to classify music like this until I heard that. And then I just said, yes, now there is a hole. I want to fill it with things that check all these boxes. Right.
And just little things that you grab onto, like little buoys that you can kind of float with, like the line body parts all over this town. They really stamp an imprimatur on the feel and the vibe of this thing.
Yeah. And it goes up that kind of that sort of bridge, you know what I mean? It's not quite a chorus, but it's like plodding along and then it goes high. But yeah, it's that tension release sort of thing. I think they just did so well. And I think, maybe you'd put a band like Fugazi, who we haven't really talked about. We talked about Ian MacKay's kind of Discord sort of thing, but the musical sort of style of Fugazi, I think kind of has some play or some part of this sort of early 90s or mid 90s, the tension release, build up and release kind of thing. How long can you hold on that part? I mean, being in a band, being a teenager and trying to being influenced by these types of bands, no, we're going to play this thing 16 times. Don't play that part twice or 4 times. We're going to 32 times. And then it goes big. Okay.
Yeah. It's an art to know how much of, a good hook or a good section to milk.
Yeah.
On the one side of things, you have Robert Pollard, who gives you 3 seconds of the great hook and never repeats it.
Yeah.
And then you get somebody else who's knows what they have, and so by the time you're done listening to the track once, you're sick of it.
Right. Yeah. Too much. I think it's a track like Monkey Trick. Definitely is that you got to you're feeling it out. I'm sure I've had many experiences post listening to this record and kind of jamming something out. No, just hold on. Let's just hang it longer, and then you got to go back and count. How many times did I play that part? Did I play it this many times? I don't even know. And, you tighten it up or you got to go longer. And then the tension and the heightening of it. Where does it get bigger? But just what a great, I think line from, not being necessarily in 4/4 time or not being, this verse chorus kind of thing that obviously Kurt Cobain hated so much and did so well. I can see where, a band like Jesus Lizard and songs like Monkey Trick, they're not writing pop songs. They're writing these other kind of song forms, ideas.
Yeah.
You could map onto those things, but they just feel so alien to that idea of something to be played on the radio or Sugar Sugar or something.
I love Sugar Sugar, by the way.
Right. It's a pop song, but it's not with, two people doing 2 different things for 2 different reasons.
Right. So do you read music?
No.
No? Okay. Carpus is a cool song. Really, I think Carpus and Rodeo in Joliet are the only 2 that are not as good as the rest.
It's funny. Yeah. I mean, I think, sometimes I would play this, this record for other people or for friends and stuff. And sometimes I would get sounds like spy music, you know what I mean? And I think a song Carpus is if they were to have rebooted, dun, 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 dun,
oh yeah, that's All right,
where are we at? Southmouth.
Love Southmouth. I feel like if they streamlined their approach, if they were interested in a broader level of success without selling themselves out, they could have gone down this path. And I think more people would be talking about them today, because these guys, they've been kind of erased a little bit from history.
Have they?
I mean, I don't think anyone really knows about these guys. If you look on social media, there's no Jesus Lizard official account. There's like a big hole.
How strange, right? I guess that's just keeping up with the formats, of our platform shiftings of things. Yeah. I mean, but Captain Beefheart doesn't have a social media account. And he exists in culture, doesn't he? In some way.
Yeah. But I mean, but you look at, for example, Nirvana. There's I don't even know how many people on Instagram. It seems like the only thing they do is collate and publish found pictures of Kurt Cobain.
Right. Well, I think it has to be. Kurt Cobain looked like Brad Pitt.
Right.
Kurt Cobain was a poster boy and but with phenomenally good looking cheekbones and a horrible drug habit that caused him to only weigh 98 pounds and
he ticks all
like a model. Yeah. And I think David Yao's hatchet shaped face was never going to allow him to, he's not the person that 14-year-old girls are going to put posters up on their wall of it.
And then most importantly, Randy, he lived.
Right. There you go.
He lived.
Yeah. So therefore the punishment is he does not get to be on social media. I think in some ways, clearly the winners in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting. It's a funny one. I feel like the hammer has not come down on the final estimation of the band, right? I think they are going to be I don't know. To me, they're such a quintessential, hugely influential band. I have to have faith that I'm not the only one out there. And in these reunion shows, I've been to both, the last 2 reunion runs they did, and they were packed.
Was it comparable to the experience you'd had when you were much younger?
No, because I'm not that age, and they're not that age. They were, but I would say, it sounded like. It sounded like the record. No, but I mean, what he did do was, have you seen footage of this from this last reunion they did? Three, 4 years ago, 2 years ago, pre-pandemic. So the band starts and Yao comes out in a white poodle mask and a white bathrobe. And it's gorgeous. And again, this is performance art, right? I mean, this is clearly a genius guy with visuals and understanding of performance in his body and what it does and what it looks like. And walks out, and it's almost this like Jodorowsky film or something, this like poodle, poodle priest walking out to the front of the stage in all white. And then he sticks his hands into this large white bucket and pulls out this black powder, almost like, like gunpowder or some kind of graphite, just finely, almost like liquid, and proceeds to like wash his hands in it as the band's playing, and then bathes his face in it. So now this all white poodle mask and black and white, bleached white stuff just is now covered in this like black, almost blood like type of thing. He's like bathing himself in this, and then that's the end of the first song. Right? And then the poodle mask comes off, and he has a bald head where he looks like Elmer Fudd. He has a bald cap on, and again and now he's singing, and the slowly the now black robe comes off, and he's shirtless in Levi's and cowboy boots, and with this Elmer Fudd head on. And again continues to sing, and the black goo and liquid powdery goo stuff gets everywhere, and it's just enriching. You know what I mean? Now here we are, 15 minutes, 20 minutes into this thing, and just like I've not taken my eyes off of him for 1 second. For this entire thing going on, like what the fuck is happening? This is not what I thought it was. This wasn't what I was looking for. This was completely surprising, original, shocking, but without crossing lines into, emulating himself, setting himself on fire, but it's still just as shocking and scary and disturbing and weird and just unexpected.
The word enriching that you just used. I mean, as far as it applies to this, is an interesting word. What is the most enriching show you've ever seen?
I mean, Juice Lizard is up there. I think the Boredoms I saw and was in a moment of just kind of like that laughing, crying, smiling sort of moment. And again, it's a very visceral kind of band that builds on, drones and repetition, kind of in a krautrock sort of way. And just, I remember just being like, this, I don't know what this is. And just kind of my mind is almost shutting off and like stop thinking and just kind of experiencing it.
What era of the band did you see them for?
The Boredoms. This was like 2009. So
is
it
that
was later,
like Super AE?
I don't know. I'm not even a huge fan of their records. I have I had some but it was just a weird live experience.
I'd say for me, there's relative merits to all kinds of different shows, but as far as pure stripped back rock and roll of the kind that we're talking about today, it would be Sleater Kinney for the Dig Me Out tour.
Ooh, that was great. I did see him on that. That was fucking awesome.
Unreal. It was unreal. What we're at is Lady Shoes. So let me ask you pointedly, have you know the lyrics, right?
Yes. I don't know anybody that's not coming to mind. Yeah, exactly.
This is his version of the aristocrat joke.
Right. Okay.
So just to give a quick version of it, There's a girl
Oh,
playing.
right. Yeah. And then someone comes in, then the doctor comes in.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Great song. Rodeo in Joliet, graded on a bell curve. I'm just bummed that this last song wasn't more of a fist in the face.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I think it goes on, I think there's a better version of this type of riff. I almost think like Art of Self-Defense or something else, or there's other songs that where they do this vibe better.
Right,
it does kind of whimper out. But so much of it's so good, right? I mean, much. I mean,
look, that's the only thing I have to say.
1 out of 10 songs that doesn't just completely knock your teeth in.
Yeah,
and they put it at the end. They were smart enough to do that. At least they didn't bury it, in the middle. They knew kind of like, that's the last one.
I give this 4 3/4.
Oh, I mean, this is a 5 for me. Of Jesus Lizard records, this is the height, obvious. And I think, I'm not the only one to say this. I think
no.
I think Goat is the high point. It's the thing that will be, if you were to tell somebody like, oh, what does that band sound like? You would say, put on Goat, listen to that. And you get a fairly comprehensive snapshot of what they do. And then, obviously there's iterations and there's nuances and creaks and paths you can take to further expand on their with who they are, but this is the primer.
This is one of those, interesting cases where it's like they have this one thing that they do. And so they, for years were whittling and came up with the perfect iteration of it. So while there's other albums that are great, if you only had this record, you would be doing okay.
Absolutely.
All right, that just about does it. Thanks for joining us. A heartfelt Discography thanks goes out to our graphic designer, TODD ZIMMER, and my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, not to mention, of course, Randall and Drag City, and, of course, our Patreon community. You soldiers of sound are what keep me going every day. And be sure to stay tuned, because this Tuesday brings upon us another incredible episode of Discography's The Private Press with Paul Major, wherein you'll be introduced to a whole new world of music there's very little chance you've either heard or heard of before, not to mention this Thursday's wildcard episode as well. Of course, you'll also want to tune in a week from today for part 2 of the Jesus Lizard, right here in the place to which you come to say, fuck you, life, I'm a music lover, this is what I do, so keep your needless bullshit to yourself, and let me dissolve into Dave's endless programming as an alternative to reality. Stay gold, motherfuckers! It's